Yeah, okay. Can we quickly talk about something? Okay, I was earlier praising this game for its harmony between the gameplay and the narrative. There are some issues where the narrative conflicts with the narrative, and this is actually something that happens. I've noticed in a lot of anime. Specifically, the one that I've seen. Well, actually, a lot of these happen. So take Ryuji for example, right? His whole thing, his whole story is about how he always feels like he's not enough, like he's an idiot who can't do anything right, you know? So, what does that's like his whole thing, and it's like, he's gotta like learn to have confidence in himself once again, and figure out that this is something that he can actually do and help people by doing, and that's like his whole character arc. But then every character in the game keeps calling him an idiot every single time he even slightly messes it up, which doesn't feel very helpful. You know? Like, the guy who has a constant inferiority complex about not being smart, not being good enough, and you're constantly calling him an idiot? Or On. Her whole thing was how she kept getting sexualized by Kamoshida, and because of her looks, and then that's great, and we resolve that and all, only for everyone to just keep sexualizing her and it just being played as a joke. Like when she fell asleep, like Morgana tried to go up to her and Ryuji tried to look at her ass. Like, I don't know, it feels kind of like that's conflicting with the whole point of her arc at the start of the game. As for Yusuke, I don't know. They constantly bully Ryuji, the same with On, the game uses her as fanservice. Yeah, and that's the second one is a thing that I've seen a lot, in which you'll have a character whose whole character arc, and this happens in so many different anime and stuff, where their whole character arc is how they get sexualized and they don't want to be seen as just a sex object, and they want to be seen as an actual person. But then the same game just keeps sexualizing them for either fan service or for funnies, and it just feels sort of disconnected there. And fuck, what was I talking about? Because there was one that I was talking about. Hold on. Ah, yes, Mishima. Mishima's the guy that I'm talking about, right? Like, as we learned during the last social link, the whole thing with Mishima is that, guess what? In middle school, no one invited him to anywhere. They forgot that he existed. They didn't even think about him. He was zero. He was nothing. And so he's doing this whole fandom site to try to, be something, to actually have an impact, and, actually be a person who isn't just ignored and forgotten, and that, not invited to places. And literally seconds afterwards, we have this big fucking meetup, and not only do we not invite him, we completely forget he exists, which is the exact same thing that his middle school bullies were doing, and that we were supposed to feel bad for in the social link, but now we're doing it? So, it's wild! It's, sadly, anime is often willing to humiliate its female characters for the sake of comedy. Yes, obviously the over-sexualization of female characters is, it's probably a very common trope, right? That is anytime you have like a cast of characters based on the 7 deadly sins, for example, right? Incidentally, the only exception I can think to this is 7 Deadly Sins itself, the show. But like Full Metal Alchemist or Asura's Wrath. Whenever you have a cast of characters based on the 7 Deadly Sins, usually the only female character is Lust, which just seems like a really weird, you know? Yeah, sadly, Mishima doesn't get to be a Persona user despite having a tragic backstory. Well, that's the thing. I don't think he needs to be a Persona user to be part of the group. That's actually one of the things that I've constantly said that I love about Persona 5. And that's how the non-Persona users, like Mishima, like Nurse Girl, right? The Death Persona. How these non-Persona users can still help the Persona users. They're essentially a support team, and sure, okay, the nurse doesn't know about the Phantoms, but Mishima does, right? And it's again something that I mentioned in Persona 3, right? How in Persona 3, I like that you have people like the chairman, or the Hirojo group people, or the policeman at the at Polonia Mall that sells you weapons, right? These are people that know about Persona users, and they don't have Personas, but they can still help. And I think that actually would help contribute to the feeling of the game where, like, any person can help bring about a better world. As, like, the whole point is, like, you shouldn't, like, the whole point of this game is that you shouldn't, like, let injustice just happen. You should stand up to it. You should stand up against injustice. And the idea should be that it shouldn't matter if you have a special superpower like a Persona or not. You still standing up against bullies and bad people and adults is still a good thing. And I think that's what makes a character like Mishima particularly powerful. Because he knows he can't do what we can. He knows he doesn't have a Persona. And yet he is still arguably the most important member of our team, other than me, who is like our team leader. Because literally, all our party members are replaceable. We will get more party members in the future, and we could theoretically never use these 4 ever again. They are completely replaceable. Like, okay, sure, they contribute certain things to the team, right? Like, Yusuke helps us draw our calling cards, for example. But what Mishima does is an essential service that literally can't be replaced. He is actually more important to the Phantom Thieves than most of the party. And so the idea of, like, a character being, just this normal person, but he still does all that he can to help the Phantom Thieves. Like, I feel like that is the kind of behavior that should be... That is something that really goes well with the themes and messages of Persona 5. And so I feel like Mishima being more directly included in the party. Like, for example, when we go to a hideout, when we go to our hideout to, like, meet and talk about targets, it shouldn't just be us, and then I'm like, yo, Mishima, like, we talked, like, 5 weeks back, and he gave me this list of people to kill. Like, Mishima should be there, and, like, he could be like, okay, so I've got your targets here, and then when we go to Mementos, he's like, all right, I'll be waiting for you here, right? Like, he can't come into Mementos with us, but he should be there as far as he can be, you know? Like, I feel like that would really add to that specific theme of the story, and it would help alleviate the sort of dissonance between, Mishima's whole fucking social link being kind of separate from the main story. And this is, again, something I've said, a sort of dissonance that happens with the sort of, as a result of the social links being optional, because you have to kind of balance the fact that, like, a person might never do Mishima's social link. Right? I don't know. I think so far that specifically the the handling of specifically, like, a character's, because, like, okay, Mishima I can kind of understand, since the whole, like, being a lonely thing is something that only, like, we learn about in his social link, and some people might not do his social link, so okay. I mean, I still think he should be included, even if it wasn't for his backstory literally making us dicks for not including him. Like, even if it wasn't for his backstory, he should be is still included. But okay, but like An and Ryuji, his whole like Ryuji's inferiority complex and An's like desire not to be sexualized are both central parts of their story in the first chapter of the game when we're taking down Kamoshida. And then the game just sort of just like says, yeah, but what if we made a funny though? You know? Whatever.
I want to punish those corrupt adults and give courage to people in trouble. Oh.
Person.
Funnily enough, the people who wrote all the, you know, who decided to write Mishima out of the story, who decided to make all these idiot jokes about Ryuji, and who decided to constantly sexualize An, are technically adults, so technically the Atlus development team act as villains from the thematic perspective of the game on like a sort of meta scale, if you want to think about it like that.
Of course.
Of course,
They're
not
under my
intentionally,
tutelage,
but it is
after all.
funny
There's nothing we can't accomplish.
that all these things are criticizing was because adults wanted to sexualize a teenage high schooler character.
Well, I hope we can keep this up.
Sleep unless I take a bath.
Persona 5's themes are at their core anti-capitalist, and Atlus is a multi-billionaire company. Not only a multi-billionaire company, a multi-billionaire company that purposely releases their games unfinished so that then they can re-release them 3 years later, again at full price, but this time finished. Like, there is some beautiful irony in there, you know?